Welcome back to Horizon 180. I'm Paul Chaderjian, and with me is Chairman of the ANC Western Region, Vicken Papazian. Vicken, countdown to Erdogan. The Tayyip Erdogan saga continues with his visit that's coming up in December 7th.
I believe that's when he's scheduled to come, yeah.
So now, for the next 4 weeks, the ANC is mobilizing, and what should the message to the Obama administration be?
Well, both to the Obama administration and to the U.S. Congress and any policymakers in Washington, D.C., is to point out, what the Turkish government is doing, and that is, actively working to its lobbyists to deny and cover up the Armenian genocide, and the many other shortcomings of the Turkish government's position and the shortcomings of their actions vis-a-vis Armenia and Nagorno-Karabakh.
Will the visit by the Prime Minister, do you think, help or hinder the genocide recognition resolutions that are now on the table in the Senate and the House?
Some would argue that it may hinder it, but quite frankly, I kind of like a showdown on these issues, and I think that in many ways it will spotlight the issue. And I want more light shed on the issue of the Armenian genocide, because after all is said and done, after all the clever arguments are made, it is what it is, and the Armenian genocide is an issue that has to be addressed and not, decided by these bogus historical commissions or other, entities such as that. So in my mind, I welcome his visit, and I think that he has to face the music when he comes here.
The call has gone out from the ANCA that this is the time for the public, for the activists, for the house moms, for the husbands and the workers, for everybody to stand up and express their opinion about the president's stance on genocide.
Sure.
Revisit how important it is for every single person watching this broadcast to get involved.
It's always important to get involved. I was reflecting on this recently of what it means to be an Armenian American or an Armenian in general, regardless of where you live, whether within the state or in the diaspora. One thing, if we have one shortcoming, it's that we have very lofty ideals for what the Armenian nation should look like, what the Armenian state should be. And in effect, we're all, in some capacity, a founding father or founding mother, and a founder of this state. And it could either be a state built on vision, built on democratic ideals, or it could be a state that is bullied by its neighbors, that puts political expediency and financial decisions above national interests. So at this point, I would argue that since Armenia is still a new independent state, and the same thing with Nagorno-Karabakh, that we always have to remain vigilant, and we always have to be heard on this issue. And that's the price of freedom. That is the price of freedom. It's not just when Erdogan comes or Gül comes or whoever visits Recep Sarkisian. This is an ongoing process. This is the price you pay for independence and freedom. And if we're going to do it right, it means that we have to constantly remain vigilant on this score. So it's always important. That importance is perhaps amplified in times where you have the visit of a foreign dignitary.
In Aspares.com today, today's Monday's issue, columnist Harut Sasunyan, who's going to be honored this weekend, talks about how the president of Armenia needs to write a letter to the House and the Senate saying the resolution must be passed now. Do you think he would do something like that?
Well, interestingly enough, I think it was a few days ago, Foreign Minister Nalbandian spoke about the need for international recognition of the genocide, and implicit in that is this idea that we should be supporting and advancing legislation like these congressional resolutions. On the eve of the signing of the protocol, Recep Sarkisian went on TV and talked about that very same issue, echoing that same line. So while I'm totally in disagreement with the Armenian government vis-a-vis entering into this extremely flawed document called the protocol, I do agree with them that international recognition of the genocide is never a bad thing.
What can the government of Armenia do now that the protocols have been signed by the presidents of Turkey and Armenia? Apparently now it looks like it's going to move forward, but there's also a lot of dialogue from Turkish types saying Azerbaijan and Karabakh are involved in the process. What can the government of Armenia do?
Yeah, they can just scuttle the whole thing, revisit what exactly they're doing, take a look at the ramifications of what they're doing, understand that there's no consensus out there. In fact, the consensus is, if anything, that the protocols are a bad idea. There's nothing that says that they have to enter into a contract with Turkey under these flawed terms. Look, no one is opposed to having normalized, and I emphasize normalized, relationship with the neighbors, even Turkey, but not under these terms. And to prove that point, I would say that if I ask Paul or Lori or whoever it may be to sit down and write a contract that you would, or some sort of treaty with Turkey that you could live with, would any of them write that treaty or contract the way it is written in these protocols? I would argue that 99% of all Armenians wouldn't do that. And that is more than enough indication to me that the document is flawed and it's a bad idea. So the Armenian government can take a second look at this, fess up to its mistake, and scuttle this, and start normalizing relations with Turkey on normal relations, on an equal bargaining position, with the understanding that the genocide isn't something to be debated. It's a fact, and the only issue is how do you deal with it.
One of our political scientists in the community, lecturer, professor, Dr. Recep Papazian, was on Horizon over the weekend, and he said the same thing with you that you've just said. He said that any of these students could write a better document than what has been presented from Turkey and Armenia via the protocols. And he also said we obviously don't have enough political history to know how to navigate these waters. Would you agree?
Well, I would agree with Dr. Papazian, who's a friend of mine and a very bright person, that this document is substandard, not getting into the actual provisions of the document. That's one. And I would agree that the Turkish diplomats are very well seasoned and very savvy. I would also, but maybe where I wouldn't 100% agree is that Armenians are capable of incredible things, and they do it on an individual basis all the time. So what we need to do is take that strength that Armenians have that serves them so well in an individual capacity and put it to use in a collective capacity. And I think we're capable of it. I think Armenians are remarkable people with remarkable talents that are capable of most anything.
We should put our minds to that as well when it comes to local elections and also national elections. There are two elections that we've talked about time and again here on Horizon 180. The first one's the LA Council seat that Paul Krikorian, our assemblyman, is running for. Update us on that. On that race.
Paul is in the runoff. That'll be coming up fairly soon.
I believe it's December 8th for the runoff elections.
Correct, December 8th. And he's a very strong candidate. Paul is a very seasoned elected official, public official. He's paid his dues. He'll be a great addition to the LA City Council. And things are looking encouraging, but no one takes anything for granted in an election.
Especially when the Azeri and Turkish lobbies are overactive. Again, in this race, with the article, it was the Aspares that wrote that the Azeri lobby had hosted a fundraiser for Paul Krikorian's challenger, or not challenger, but opponent, Essel.
Yeah, you see more and more the Turkish and Azeri lobby expanding from Washington-only activity to activity in Sacramento, in Los Angeles, and in other areas, more grassroots work. Now, obviously, the Turkish Americans are not very numerous in this country. This is more a design and a result of kind of centralized manipulation by the Turkish lobby.
And as we saw in Ohio, where Gene Schmidt had taken at least $30,000 in donations for a congressional seat where there were no Turkish populations that were evident. Update us on the Gene Schmidt and David Krikorian race.
Well, the Ohio Elections Commission did come down with a ruling. The ruling was kind of a mixed ruling, finding David, absolving him of certain misdeeds and finding him somewhat complicit in certain misdeeds. That will be challenged. The constitutionality of that body, the Ohio Elections Commission, will be challenged. You have a elections commission that is regulating political speech. On its face would appear, and I would argue, it's a violation of the U.S. Constitution, and it has to be challenged. The fact that they gave such short shrift and a convoluted decision on the issue of Schmidt versus Krikorian is just more evidence that it's just a bad idea, and that will be challenged. All the shortcomings of that administrative body will be challenged in the near future by the attorneys for David Krikorian.